We were in Vancouver, and Wesley Snipes was going crazy, and he wouldn't come out of his trailer, and you'd walk by his trailer, and this wall of pot stench would just be like, what?
Worked with Wesley on those first 2 films. Did something go wrong? Was he in just...
It was an incredibly fraught experience. It was personally very difficult. I was very depressed afterwards.
What would you do if the lead star of a $65 million movie wanted you to disappear? Not on screen, but in real life. Welcome to the nightmare known as Wesley Snipes. Hollywood has no shortage of feuds, loud ones, public ones. But very few are as quiet, long-running, and vicious as this one. And at the center of it all is Wesley Snipes. For years, the public heard nothing but whispers that Wesley Snipes was difficult to work with, that he had a temper, that his ego was massive. But no one dared to ask the truly dangerous question. Who did Snipes actually hate the most? What pushed one of the most powerful Hollywood stars of the 1990s to lose control like this? This is not rumor. This is a story told by the people who were actually on set. And this is the moment we uncover the real feud of Wesley Snipes. Wesley Snipes and David S. Goyer. When the lead star turns the director into a target, it all began in Vancouver, Canada in 2004. At that time, Wesley Snipes was not only the lead star, but also a producer. The man largely responsible for turning Blade into Marvel's first successful superhero film franchise. However, when the third film began, production, Snipes started to feel betrayed. New Line Cinema chose David S. Goyer as the director. Although Goyer had been the writer of the first 2 films, Snipes believed he was not capable of taking the reins. Worse still, Snipes believed the studio was deliberately pushing the character Blade to the sidelines in order to promote 2 new characters, Abigail Whistler played by Jessica Biel, and Hannibal King played by Ryan Reynolds, with the goal of creating a spin-off film. To Snipes, this was a direct humiliation. Hell on the Vancouver set. The tension quickly turned into a Cold War, then erupted into violence. According to supporting actor Patton Oswalt, Snipes chose the most extreme form of resistance. He spent most of his time inside his trailer smoking marijuana. He only came out to film close-up shots. For action scenes or scenes with other actors, he demanded the use of a stunt double. Snipes even refused to speak to Goyer directly. Instead, he wrote commands or complaints on post-it notes and placed them everywhere, always signing them as Blade. The Cold War quickly escalated into physical violence. During one heated argument over directing decisions, Snipes reportedly charged at David S. Goyer and caused him harm right in front of the crew. The incident was so serious that Goyer left immediately. He went to a local bar, met a group of bikers, and hired them as personal security for the following day to send a warning to Snipes. After filming wrapped, the feud did not end on set, but continued into the courtroom. Consequences and the $1 million lawsuit. In 2005, just a few months after Blade Trinity was released and received negative reactions, Wesley Snipes made a shocking move. He sued the very people who had paid him. The lawsuit was filed in Los Angeles Superior Court seeking damages of up to $5 million. Snipes claimed that New Line Cinema had deliberately reduced Blade's screen time in order to promote the characters played by Biel and Reynolds. He described this as an illegal act of brand hijacking. Despite being listed as a producer, Snipes accused Goyer of making major decisions, such as casting, without consulting him. Snipes stated that if the decision had been his, Ryan Reynolds and Jessica Biel would never have set foot on the set. The lawsuit also implied that forcing an actor of Snipes' stature to support younger, less experienced actors at the time was a violation of the contract in terms of creative integrity and professional image. To add even more weight to his case, Snipes delivered what he considered a decisive blow. He accused director David S. Goyer and the studio of racial bias. He argued that the predominantly white production team had deliberately isolated him, the only black individual in a position of power. Snipes claimed that being erased from his own film was part of a systematic campaign of discrimination designed to push him out of the superhero genre. The lawsuit never reached the dramatic public trial many expected. In 2006, the 2 sides reached a confidential out-of-court settlement. The specific terms were never disclosed, but industry insiders believe Snipes received a payout in exchange for his silence and his permanent departure from the Blade franchise. The lawsuit was ultimately resolved, But Snipes' reputation suffered serious damage. The industry began labeling him as difficult to work with, contributing to a slowdown in his career before he was later sentenced for tax evasion in 2010. To this day, David S. Goyer remains distant when speaking about Snipes. In a 2021 interview, when asked about the alleged attack, Goyer responded vaguely, "Let's just leave that in the past." As for Snipes, he denied ever attacking Goyer in a 2020 interview with The Guardian, sarcastically remarking, "If I had attacked a director, do you really think I'd be sitting here talking to you? A muscular black man attacking a white director would go straight to jail." But if the confrontation with David S. Goyer was an explosion of physical conflict, the feud between Wesley Snipes and the next figure would become a psychological ordeal, one where silence was far more terrifying than any shouted confrontation. Ryan Reynolds, the thorn in King Wesley's side. Wesley Snipes entered the third Blade film with the mindset of a threatened ruler. The arrival of Ryan Reynolds as Hannibal King was not just a supporting role, it was a studio plan to shift power. Snipes saw in Ryan everything he despised: youth, a fast-talking comedic style. And most importantly, Ryan was the face the studio wanted to position as Blade's future replacement. From that moment on, a brutal psychological war began. Snipes' hostility did not erupt through shouting matches, but through a harsh strategy of isolation that nearly drained Ryan Reynolds emotionally. Throughout filming, Snipes embraced an extreme form of method acting. He refused to call Ryan by his real name, referring to him only as that white guy. Or worse, using racially demeaning language. One of the strangest stories in Hollywood history happened here. During a morgue scene, Snipes, unwilling to cooperate with Ryan and the director, lay still and refused to open his eyes. After hours of failed persuasion, the crew had no choice but to film him with his eyes closed. They later used CGI to digitally add open eyes onto his eyelids. Ryan Reynolds later told IGN that whenever he tried to lighten the mood with humor, Snipes would stand motionless like a statue, his eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses, completely emotionless. Ryan described it this way: "It was like trying to do comedy in front of a brick wall that felt like it was about to collapse on you." Wesley never breaks character, and his character wanted me dead. In a later interview, Ryan Reynolds did not hide how terrifying those days were. "I remember once saying to him, 'Wesley, you know we're on the same team, right?' He looked at me like I was dirt on the bottom of his shoe. There were times I had to deliver my lines alone because Wesley had gone back to his trailer or simply refused to respond. This feud seemed permanently carved into history, like a scar that would never heal." After the film, Snipes' career declined, and he later went to prison while Ryan Reynolds rose to the top with Deadpool. But the greatest turning point came in 2024 with Deadpool and Wolverine. It was Ryan Reynolds, the man once rejected by Snipes, who picked up the phone and called his former enemy. He told Snipes, "The world needs your blade one more time." On Wesley Snipes' first day on set in London, the entire crew held their breath. Everyone knew the bloody history between the two men dating back to 2004. Snipes stepped out wearing the iconic Blade costume. He remained cold, dark sunglasses, hiding every emotion. No one knew whether Blade would smile or once again become the stone wall he had been 20 years earlier. Ryan Reynolds stood opposite him in his Deadpool suit, his face distorted beneath heavy makeup. One was the former target of humiliation. The other, the man who had once turned the set into a nightmare. Ryan stepped forward, breaking the tension with a signature self-mocking Deadpool joke followed immediately by a firm handshake and a warm embrace. Ryan gave Snipes the highest level of respect and complete authority. He asked the crew to address Snipes as Sir. He even allowed Snipes' character to deliver iconic self-aware lines about himself. "There is only one blade, and there will only ever be one blade." Wesley Snipes was genuinely shocked by the man Ryan had become. He told Forbes Ryan is a master now. "He's no longer that young guy trying to push my buttons back then." Watching how he runs an entire film empire with generosity and professionalism made me feel small for holding on to old grudges. He made me feel welcome, something I never felt in 2004. During the filming of shared action scenes in the desert location, known as the Void crew members, recalled seeing Snipes and Reynolds laughing together between takes. Snipes even coached Ryan on a few martial arts moves, something that would have been unthinkable 20 years earlier. When the final scene wrapped, Ryan Reynolds led the entire crew in a standing ovation for Wesley Snipes that lasted 2 full minutes. Snipes removed his sunglasses, and this time people saw his eyes truly open, not through CGI but through genuine emotion. If Ryan Reynolds was a victim of psychological isolation, then the next figure was the one who lit the fuse on the truth bomb, exposing the darkest hidden side of Wesley Snipes to the light. Patton Oswalt, the betrayer. In 2004, when he joined the project, Blade Trinity, Patton Oswalt was just a supporting comedian playing Hedges, a technician on Blade's team. Wesley Snipes, by contrast, was a lord with absolute power on set. Snipes' hostility toward Patton grew out of pure contempt. He saw Patton as insignificant a comedian unworthy of sharing the frame with an A-list martial arts star. That imbalance in status made Snipes feel free to display his most bizarre behavior right in front of Patton. A witness to the madness, Patton was not only disliked, he was forced into the role of an unwilling audience to Snipes' toxic performances. It was Patton who later revealed details that stunned the world. He recalled that every morning walking past Snipes' trailer, the smell of marijuana smoke was so thick it was suffocating. He never came out unless the cameras were ready, and when he did, he stepped out surrounded by this strange cloud of smoke. Patton witnessed Snipes hurling insults at Ryan Reynolds, and he saw Snipes attempt to go after director Goyer. When Patton tried to diffuse the tension with humor, Snipes looked at him as if he were some disturbing foreign object. Patton was also the one who brought to light the now infamous detail that Snipes signed every note as Blade. Patton mocked it, saying, "That's not staying in character. That's a completely unhinged escape from reality." The shocking backstab of 2012. For nearly a decade, what happened in Vancouver was kept sealed like a military secret. But in 2012, during an interview with the AV Club, Patton Oswalt decided to pour cold water on Snipes' already declining career. He told the story with heavy sarcasm and biting irony. He called Snipes unstable and described the Blade set as an asylum with Snipes at the top. He only showed up to shoot close-ups. Every other scene we had to act opposite his stunt double. It was the worst experience of my career. Patton's account went viral almost instantly, turning Wesley Snipes from a legendary action star into a punchline, a textbook example of an arrogant and out-of-control celebrity. Wesley Snipes never forgave Patton. After his release from prison, during interviews aimed at salvaging his reputation, Snipes reserved his harshest words for Patton. "Let me make this clear. Patton Oswalt is a washed-up comedian. He needed attention, so he fabricated stories. He wasn't even there when the important things happened. Why would anyone believe a stand-up comic over a real actor?" Snipes even suggested that Patton's stories were rooted in racial bias, deliberately painting the image of an aggressive and unhinged black man in order to destroy him. The outcome: a feud beyond repair. Unlike Ryan Reynolds, who chose forgiveness and invited Snipes back, Patton Oswalt and Wesley Snipes remain on opposite sides of the divide. To this day, whenever Wesley Snipes' name comes up, Patton does not hesitate to deliver sharp, bitter remarks. Snipes in turn considers Patton a stain on his memory. If Ryan Reynolds represented redemption, then Patton Oswalt was the man who drove the final nail into the coffin of Snipes' reputation for many years. But the next feud in Wesley Snipes' life would hurt more than all the others. Not with a rival, not with a challenger to his power, but with someone who once stood beside him from the very beginning. Steven Norrington, from ally to adversary. In 1997, when Marvel was an empire on the edge of bankruptcy, Wesley Snipes and Steven Norrington joined forces to create a miracle. They were hailed as a duo that changed history. Norrington was a director with an extreme, gritty visual style. Snipes was a martial arts star at the absolute peak of his power. Together, they shaped a Blade that was stylish, dark, and brutal. They laid the foundation for the entire modern superhero genre. At the time, Snipes saw Norrington as the only true genius who genuinely understood his scale. They were a perfect pairing, raw physical force fused with bold artistic vision. But in the end, their relationship fractured in the most painful way possible. The resentment began to surface when Snipes started to see himself as the absolute owner of the Blade character. He began interfering deeply in the director's work, On set, Snipes no longer behaved like an actor. He criticized Norrington's camera angles, demanded script changes to suit his own vision, and frequently disrupted filming to assert his authority as a producer. One crew member recalled that Norrington, a strong-willed and eccentric personality himself, felt deeply insulted by Snipes' condescending attitude. In the final weeks of shooting in Los Angeles, Snipes often arrived late, forcing hundreds of crew members to wait while he trained martial arts or simply went to sleep. When Norrington tried to push for progress, Snipes responded coldly, implying, "Without me, this movie is nothing." That moment killed Norrington's passion. Those close to him say he swore he would never again step into the same room as Wesley Snipes. The mutual understanding they once shared turned into heated arguments over who was truly the film's creator. A bitter outcome. A genius suffocated. The feud with Snipes, combined with crushing pressure from the studio, completely disillusioned Steven Norrington with Hollywood. People close to him say Snipes' arrogance and impossible behavior were among the main reasons the director grew disgusted with working alongside A-list stars. That is why, despite Blade's massive box office success, Norrington flatly rejected a huge paycheck to return for the sequel, leaving the role to Guillermo del Toro. The experience with Snipes left a deep psychological scar. When Norrington later made The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen in 2003 and clashed with another legendary star, Sean Connery, the ghost of Wesley Snipes resurfaced. Connery was even harsher, reportedly calling Norrington a madman. Norrington began to see a repeating pattern. A-list stars always wanted total control. After the failure of The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, he chose to walk away from a high-profile career while still in his early 40s. Norrington turned to sculpture a world where statues do not argue back and do not demand power the way Wesley Snipes did. A tragic loss for a remarkable talent. Wesley Snipes. Regret that came too late. Deep down, Snipes likely always knew that Norrington was the most talented collaborator he ever had. This feud was not about physical conflict, but the collapse of a great creative partnership. When Snipes entered the third film Blade Trinity and clashed with David S. Goyer, his erratic behavior was in many ways a psychological reaction to the absence of a second Norrington, someone capable of both challenging and understanding his ego. Snipes unknowingly destroyed his greatest ally, only to descend into isolation and unchecked authority. Even today, when speaking about the first Blade film, Snipes continues to praise Norrington, yet never explains why they never faced each other again. It remains the quietest and most painful scar in the journey of the Daywalker. Wesley Snipes won the power struggle, but he lost the one person who could have turned him into an immortal legend. Jessica Biel, the silent victim in Wesley Snipes' rage. In Snipes' eyes, Jessica Biel's arrival on the set of Blade Trinity in 2004 felt like a territorial invasion. This feud was not loud or explosive, but it left deep psychological scars that lasted for years. In 2004, Jessica Biel was a rising young star, someone New Line Cinema hoped would become the centerpiece of a future spin-off centered on the demon hunter Abigail Whistler. But Biel's presence immediately triggered Snipes. He did not just see her as a pretty face, but as someone plotting to steal screen time from the King of Blade. Wesley Snipes chose to turn her life on set into a frozen hell. Instead of calling his co-star by her real name, Wesley Snipes adopted a level of contempt that bordered on cruelty. For months of filming, Snipes never once addressed Jessica Biel by name. He referred to her only with vague labels like that girl or that person. Whenever they had to share a scene, Snipes would stare straight through her as if she were air. According to crew members, Snipes often muttered negative remarks about Biel's acting ability while she was in the middle of performing a scene. He openly mocked the idea of a woman wielding a bow as a demon hunter, claiming it diminished Blade's toughness. In scenes that required cooperation between Blade and Abigail, Snipes frequently walked off to his trailer, midway through filming, forcing Jessica Biel to act against green screens or stunt doubles. Biel was left to perform some of the most demanding action sequences, while being completely isolated by her own lead co-star. The dramatic peak, a near-fatal accident, and chilling indifference. There is a well-known story that highlights Jessica Biel's dedication in stark contrast to Snipes' attitude. During one action scene, Biel performed a real archery shot. She accidentally struck an extremely expensive camera worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. The entire crew froze in fear for her safety. While the director and crew rushed to check on Biel Wesley, Snipes stood at a distance watching coldly and made a sarcastic remark implying a bunch of amateurs. He offered no concern, no reassurance, further reinforcing the invisible wall of hostility between the two generations. Jessica Biel has always been a private person, but whenever she has spoken about that period, her words carry exhaustion. It was a very, very challenging set. There were tensions you never want to experience again in your career. Meanwhile, Ryan Reynolds, who witnessed everything, stepped in to defend Biel, saying he was disturbed by how Snipes treated the young actress. Watching her be treated like she didn't exist was hard to accept. Jessica showed an unbelievable level of resilience in the face of that behavior. The outcome: permanent silence. Unlike Ryan Reynolds, who chose reconciliation in 2024, Jessica Biel has maintained absolute distance from Wesley Snipes to this day. She has never mentioned his name again in later interviews. For Biel, Blade Trinity became a costly lesson about Hollywood's darker side and the toxicity of unchecked stardom. This feud exposed a harsh truth about Wesley Snipes at that time. He did not only resent powerful men like Goyer, he despised anyone, even a young woman, if that person dared to threaten his untouchable position within the dark universe he ruled. Beyond these personal feuds, Wesley Snipes would soon drive the entire system itself to the brink of madness. The feud between Wesley Snipes and Marvel Studios, the era before the MCU explosion. This is a bitter chapter about betrayal and power. In the late 1990s, Marvel Comics was on the brink of bankruptcy. They were forced to sell off the rights to characters like X-Men and Spider-Man just to survive. In that context, Blade in 1998, a project Marvel partnered on with New Line Cinema, became an unexpected smash hit. Wesley Snipes was not just an actor at the time, he was the face of Marvel's revival. Without Snipes, there would be no billion-dollar empire as we know it today. Because of that, Snipes believed he had earned the right to stand above even Marvel's top executives. When Marvel abandoned its hero, the breaking point came during the production of Blade Trinity in 2004. At that time, Marvel executives like Kevin Feige and David Maisel were beginning to dream of a connected cinematic universe. They saw Snipes as increasingly uncontrollable, and the Blade brand under New Line as a dead end. Instead of siding with Snipes in his conflicts with director Goyer, Marvel chose silence and distance. Snipes believed Marvel had used him to build credibility, then discarded him once the job was done. He accused Marvel of quietly approving New Line Cinema's plan to turn the third film into a launchpad for new characters, the Night Stalkers, rather than focusing on Blade himself. In his 2005 lawsuit, Snipes did not only target New Line, but also the Marvel-affiliated producers. He argued they had violated their agreement by denying him creative control over the script and turning him into a puppet on his own stage. The peak Marvel reclaims its child and erases Snipes. The deepest wound came when Marvel Studios quietly waited for New Line Cinema's contract to expire so they could reclaim the rights to Blade. At Comic-Con 2019, when Kevin Feige announced a new Blade project and introduced Mahershala Ali as the lead, Marvel did not invite Snipes, nor did they even mention his name during the historic reveal. For Snipes, this was a public humiliation. He spent years campaigning on social media for a return to the role, but Marvel responded with total silence. For more than a decade, Marvel largely avoided referencing the original Blade trilogy in official MCU history materials. They wanted to launch a new era without the dark stain associated with Wesley Snipes. It was widely seen as a cold, calculated strategy of legacy erasure. The outcome: an unthinkable reconciliation and the rise of the Godfather. It seemed this feud would last forever. But once again, Ryan Reynolds became the unlikely peacemaker. To bring Snipes back for Deadpool and Wolverine in 2024, Ryan had to personally convince Kevin Feige and Disney and Marvel leadership to set aside old legal disputes and long-held assumptions about Snipes' temperament. When Marvel Studios officially allowed Snipes to return in the Blade costume, it was a delayed admission of a simple truth: we would not be here today without you. According to behind-the-scenes accounts, when Wesley Snipes' face appeared on screen in full vampire hunter gear, Kevin Feige reportedly gasped and said, "I can't believe it." Feige later admitted to the crew that seeing Snipes back in the role after 20 years was deeply emotional. like a destiny finally coming full circle. He explained that the moment was not just nostalgia, but a kind of vindication of Snipes' importance. We are standing on the shoulders of giants, and Wesley was the first giant. Standing in the middle of the battle in the void, Blade, played by Wesley Snipes, looked straight into the camera and delivered a line that cut like steel. "There's only been one Blade. There's only ever gonna be one Blade." The line felt like a final reconciliation between Marvel and Wesley Snipes. It was written by Reynolds himself as a gift to Snipes, a clear acknowledgement that no matter who plays the role in the future, Snipes remains the original and irreplaceable Blade. The final battle, and the most brutal one of all, Wesley Snipes, the entire Hollywood system. In the 1990s, Wesley Snipes was one of the very few black stars with true green light power. If he said yes, a project got funded. He refused to be just a hired actor. Snipes formed his own production company, Amen Raw Films, and began demanding total creative control. The Hollywood studio system operated like a rigid hierarchy. When Snipes started interfering with scripts, casting decisions, and even directing choices, he unknowingly placed himself in direct conflict with the executives behind the desks, the people who saw actors as nothing more than pieces in a marketing strategy. Snipes pushed back by staging work stoppages on set, locking himself inside his trailer, and communicating only through written notes. To the studios, this was an unforgivable breach of labor discipline. They began spreading a message throughout the industry: Wesley Snipes is impossible to work with. In 2008, when Snipes was convicted of tax evasion, the Hollywood system did not step in to help. Instead, it treated the situation as the perfect excuse to erase him. While many white stars with legal troubles were given second chances, Snipes was quietly placed on a blacklist. Big budget projects disappeared. Major studios stopped returning calls. Hollywood turned Snipes into a warning sign for other stars. No matter how big you are, the system can make you vanish. Even in 2024, Snipes' return in Deadpool and Wolverine was not a reconciliation with the studio system. It was a bold workaround engineered by Reynolds. Ryan used his personal power to vouch for Snipes, forcing the system to reopen its doors to the exiled star. The massive success of that comeback was a slap in the face to the old studio logic, the same system that once believed Snipes was finished and no longer commercially viable. Wesley Snipes may have lost the legal and financial battles with Hollywood, but he won the battle of legacy. He remains the only man who dared to grab an entire system by the throat.
And this led to his first movie role.
Wesley Snipes is not
Director
a perfect
David S.
legend,
Ward said that
but
even
it is
though Snipes
precisely
was
those
this
cracks
hilarious
that make
sports
him
comedy
impossible
is
to forget.
warmants in the bad.
So what do you think? Was Wesley Snipes a victim of a ruthless Hollywood system? Or did his oversized ego ultimately cost him everything? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Like the video and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next stories about black legends, great and complex figures, and the hidden sides of Hollywood that are rarely told in full. We will be back with truths that have never been spoken.
All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast. There is still so much more to explore: stories of resilience, legacy, and truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on your screen.